All right, hell yeah. So we took the RMR Fat Cat with the kayak underneath it, and we took it to the wave. And so we have, this is the setup. We got 3 clips, just as a really quick highlight. These were the only kind of 3 spins I was able to do. And it was kind of a bummer. I'm not even able to spin off this corner. There's a chance that you could modify it, though, to actually do that. And so now this was a full run. I'm getting pretty good in the NRS where I'm able to do spins on repeat. And there's no reason I shouldn't be able to do a spin and then catch like a stable position. And so, yeah, and so we do just more spins over there. But I'm just going to say after this run, we're going to show all the RMR Fat Cat footage. There's 5 minutes of highlights, and then we compare with 8 minutes of highlights in the NRS, so you can be the judge. After that, we show all the footage, all the raw footage. So hell yeah, sit back, enjoy, and compare. Booyah. Alright, hell yeah. So we did it. We took out the RMR Fat Cat and we put a kayak underneath it. And so we have the green kayak underneath it. For whatever reason, half the footage is in black and white. But hell yeah. And so I'm gonna go through, it's 5 minutes of highlights, and then we're gonna do the highlights of my raft, because at the same flow I took my NRS raft and we can compare. Now, hell yeah. And I'm gonna briefly kind of just talk about the physics. I definitely really enjoy the kayak underneath this RMR Fat Cat because I'm able to edge. And when I do edge to one side or the other tube releases, obviously right there. When I try spins, what I'm going to point out is that the corners dig in, and the low side corners. But hell yeah, that spin went. Now, any of the spins that go in this setup are going to be spinning around the neutral axis, right in the middle. And a lot of the spins don't go because I'm always jumping to the low side. You'll see that is I'll try to spin the boat and then immediately get my body shifted to the low side, but that really drives in, kind of the square corners. And so the first improvement, even though this is a huge boat, would be potentially remove material or make all the corners, higher rocker. Start that rocker early. And but here's one of the big benefits. It actually surfs in. Now we do get kicked out just like any other raft, but when it locks in, you know what I mean, it'll surf in. And the RMR Fat Cat definitely has big straight tubes underneath. There's not a lot of rocker, if not zero rocker, on the tubes, basically from thwart to thwart. But once that's engaged, hell yeah. But one of the improvements that I've mentioned, especially sitting in the back corner, is to have it flat at the back corner where you're sitting, but then have a pivot or like a hinge in the design to where the front end lays in, because when you're surfing it's kind of easy to get pieced off the back. So that spin could have gone, but I think the other take home was when I do spin, just keep rotating the boat, because I've surfed this at the North Carolina wave. And it definitely won't, the second you get it to rotate, it'll rotate. So if it's surfing and rotating, it'll rotate and stay in. And so I think there's a benefit to having the kayak, but also the kayak is, like, the second it turns sideways, you're going to catch current as well. So that profile could be even just a little bit more soft instead of hard chined. And hell yeah, we did a pretty good job of keeping water out of the floor, but that's the other thing. I have no way to test or to tell how much water filled in. I do at the very end of the video show you how much water filled in, but at no point was I checking how much water. I just noticed after about, an hour I was kind of done, and I was like, nope, I'm not. So that was probably the best one right there. Hell yeah. So we almost did a spin. Okay, so we got another minute maybe I'll talk about a little bit more of the highlights, but definitely just these straight surfs, it's looking good. Hell yeah. Yeah, and so this right here is a dynamic that my NRS could improve upon. Hands down, it would be sweet to have the front profile to be just like a paddle cat, and then the rear profile to be like a stern. But because the kayak is back in that stern, I do feel that stern. One of the moves that I didn't mention was coming in on that far left corner and entering the wave. I switch positions. So I come in on the right, and then I have the boat shift. Like right here, I'm going to have the boat shift underneath me, and that's a stern dominant move. You know what I mean? The fact that the stern is moving while I'm shifting, because any shift from one side to another, the physics says the boat's going to shift as well, and so that's like the stern has to move as well. And so because the stern is sticking out with that kayak, that's more of a kayak move, and so that was pretty sweet. All right, so that's the 5 minutes of this. Now we'll do the NRS. Booyah. All right, hell yeah. So we have 8 minutes of highlights in the NRS. Hell yeah, we do a lot of spins, and this session we're able to link a lot of moves. And so there's this first one in particular is kind of a long set. So hell yeah. So we did a couple spins there. And then we're still working on straight surf, because I think people want, they want to be able to straight surf. And even in my NRS, it's a difficult boat to straight surf. It's always spinning because it's always on these pivot points. And when I edge, it gravitates towards those pivot points. And the second the bow starts to move, it's going to catch water, and then it's going to initiate those spins. And so that is one thing that I would like to improve upon, even with this NRS, to have a design where you do kind of have that paddle cat front end. And so today's footage in the NRS, we're not pulling up on the front. You'll see that front underneath the floor definitely sticks out. That is, I don't think any other R1 or small raft has this type of floor that sticks out so far. And not downward wise, but just front to back. And so that definitely tags the incoming water, and the second you're off just a little bit, it's going to turn that boat. But that long floor underneath also is a pretty good surf platform. Hell yeah, we're going to show some of the edging. This is the only footage of that. But just the fact that this fits. I mean, this boat is a common size. It's 10 feet. It's 5 inches, 5 feet by 5 feet 3 inches. And the RMR Thundercloud feels noticeably wider. And that's at 5 7 inch beam. And I literally can't do mini spins. That's the next thing, is to modify the floor of the Thundercloud so when I come to the wave I can at least look the same. But I mean, I wasn't even able to do one spin, and so that really shows the dynamics underfoot is very important. But hell yeah, we were able to kind of seal the deal on a lot of these combos, and then even get into a stable surfing position. But yep, it always kind of, turns, so that's kind of interesting. I'll have to pay attention to that, especially with the RMR Thundercloud, because that has more paddle cat railed tubes, and that seems to have a nice balanced surf. Yeah. And then the question is, how do you balance that? Well, I would assume that you want the stern, that's what I've been working on, have the stern pointy, just like this, so I can pivot off the stern and do these rotations. I mean, that just makes sense. But then the bow, have that, and in the other week's footage, I was pulling up on the floor, and that made a huge difference. It noticeably cupped the floor, and what it also did is provided that that rocker, so the second that I shift my shins to the bow, the front end might dive in. That's a very important aspect. Hell yeah. And so that's what I'm, finding is that, this isn't the most perfect boat, but I mean, you can see it's a night and day difference of, this thing feels like a leaf. The weight isn't too much. Like the RMR Fat Cat is lighter. It just has such a huge wetted area that the second you build traction, it feels heavier. Where this, with all the, add-ons that I've put in this, even got like a 2x4 almost down the middle. I'll have to weigh them, but this is just noticeably lighter, and it's freed up because we have the floor, protruded. And so reducing wetted area really helps, but keeping long surfaces, for speed also helps. But then here, and we're able to side surf. And then definitely trying to get your corners from not, hindering. And this is a diamond-shaped boat, so for the most part, the corners don't really get in the way. All right, we got 3 more minutes. And so that one was a double pump, and that just kind of shows you that, like, that double pump goes. That time it just didn't, but I wanted to include that in just because, like, you have more time to save these maneuvers because of where the pivot point is, and potentially jumping to a low side. That's going to help all boats. And my boat doesn't even have that in spades either. Like jumping to the bow, and then you're on this new pivot. It's very, like most of these boats are very flat underneath, and it's very difficult to jump to the bow and try to teeter-totter it onto a new sliding or surfing surface. Hell yeah. Yeah, and then this I included, or I wanted to comment that, man, it's hard to, like the second it wants to go one way, it's hard to free it up the other direction. And the second you free it up the other direction, sometimes it overcorrects, and now it's going that other direction. So that is something that I think with a paddle cat front end, you can kind of stabilize that front end. But these last few, I'm showing that I am straight surfing. And this was good practice because right here I'm on my left side, but for either that last one or coming up on this one or the next one, I'm working on this side. This is my off side, and just trying to paddle pry, keep a straight boat. That's easier said than done, And so what I have been practicing is just entering the wave on my offside. Do all the moves on my offside. Just like you would on your strong side, a lot of R1ers never take a stroke on their offside, so they're doing everything on their strong side. So then the opposite is true. You could do everything on your offside. It's completely awkward, but it's a huge skill, especially on a wave where you're just like, hey, things aren't going on my strong side, but then you flip to your offside and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, right here is a balanced position because the bow is getting pushed to the left up against the pile, and then I'm just prying the boat back. And then it's, yeah. But then this happens, and I'm not able to get it back. That's why I showed this. Like, that happened, and that's crazy that I'm not able to get the boat back on point. Especially with all the wild pivots I can do. And so I think, I'll pay attention to those things and maybe have more releasable area. Okay, we only have one more clip. We're done with this. Hell yeah. And then we're going to get into our next session. It just shows you all the footage. And I really wanted to make this, kind of a one and done. All the highlights, even though they were long, 5 and 8 minutes of highlights. But then you can see all the clips. Hell yeah. Alright, hell yeah. So this small wave really side surfs, and I was, hoping to kind of side surf this really well. It was alright, you know what I mean? It wasn't super grippy in a side surf. But here is some footage of this small wave, and then we also compare it to the NRS. Booyah. Alright, so now here is all the footage of the main wave. We do the RMR Fat Cat first and then the NRS second. All the clips, start and finish with the boat entering the frame and leaving the frame, so you can kind of see how efficient it is to get to shore. There is some huge benefits of the RMR Fat Cat to actually like throw those pontoons sometimes and get to shore, lean on that front tube. But still, it's a bigger boat, so if it's sideways like that last clip, you get drawn down. You can't just jump to a pivot point in like the NRS. All right, so hell yeah, I'll leave you to this, but this is it. All the footage at the very end, we show how much water the kayak, got. We tried to cover it up, but you get to see that at the very end. All right, hell yeah. All right, hell yeah. So here's the kayak, and this is what we did. And we just put a strap and tightened it down, and that didn't go anywhere. And so we're done with this for the day, but that's how much water was in there, and that's what I kind of felt. I kind of like, yeah, it's not going to be magical. And so, hell yeah, so that's a ton of water. But anyway, we'll get better at that, and I think it was a good success. I almost spun it, so that's pretty sweet. That's a behemoth to spin. Here we go.